If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Everybody, happy Tuesday. It's that time again. Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we are live from the studios of WMNH 95.3 FM in glorious downtown Manchester, New Hampshire, and it is a glorious day. Also on Comcast 97 if you're in Manchester, streaming at WMNHradio.org and on the Facebook on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And, of course, you can go to my website, mattconnerton.com, for all of your streaming options and social media links and contact info and show archives, etc., etc. Hello to our friends at Raw Talk Online and Tomorrow Radio. Today is Tuesday, September 21, 2021. So welcome, one and all. And I do want to remind you, of course, for those watching online or on Channel 97, you can see I'm wearing my Hopknot, one of my Hopknot shirts. Hopknot on Elm, our wonderful sponsor. Don't go there today, however, because Monday and Tuesday is their weekend, but they are open Wednesday through Sunday, and they have delicious gourmet pretzels, or delicious. For some reason, I decided to add an extra syllable in there and said delicious. That's how delicious they are. It's not enough to just say delicious. They're delicious gourmet pretzels. And they have craft beer, and they have wine. They have live entertainment every Thursday night. The great Bill Cini, a trivia maven, if I may use that term, does trivia night Thursday nights at the Hopknot, just as he does Wednesdays on the morning show. And then Friday nights, our friend Grant Lampton performs live every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Hopknot. So great food, great service, great family that owns and operates it, and we are so very honored and proud to have them as a sponsor of this program and of WMNH. The Hopknot on Elm and the Brady Sullivan at 1000 Elm Street. By the way, speaking of Grant Lampton, so that is his stage name, if you will. But on Tuesdays, typically, he comes in here as his normal, regular self, Mike Sutterth, and does his weekly Tweakonomics segment. However, as I mentioned yesterday, he will not be in today. He's going to be in tomorrow instead. He asked if this week he could come in on Wednesday because apparently he received a show offer for this evening that he really wants to play, and it sounds like it was a great opportunity for him. So today he will not be Mike Sutterth. He will be Grant Lampton, as he will be playing live, but he'll be in tomorrow in the second hour of Matt Connarton Unleashed, right after our weekly album review segment with Dirk Dunn of Arrogant Media. So that will be happening tomorrow. But today, if you would like to call into the show, you can. 603-250-6007 is the number. 603-250-6007. You can also text me at 617-917-4476. Tweet me at Matt Connarton or send an email to matt@mattconnerton.com. And, of course, you can always interact and opine in the Facebook live chat. But the best thing to do so that we can hear and enjoy your dulcet tones is to give us a call at 603-250-6007. I have a very exciting subject I want to discuss today. But let's say hello to everybody in the Facebook live chat. Mike Pelopita, first one in today. Mike, of course, from Queen City Cabinetry in the historic Sunbeam Mall, another one of our amazing sponsors here at WMNH 95.3. Big supporters, and we appreciate Mike very much. Rocky Huber joins us and says, hey, everyone. Wayne Noel, all the way from Michigan. says, hello, everyone. And Wayne says, hey, Matt, do you still have that big zit on the right side of your face that you posted earlier? No, that was not a zit. That was an I voted sticker. Here's what happened. You know, usually when you go to vote, you get the I voted sticker and you're supposed to put it, you know, like you can put it on your shirt or something. I'm a bit of a klutz. My motor skills are limited, and I was aiming for my shirt and I ended up slapping it on my face when I took the picture. What can you do? But I'm glad that you brought that up, Wayne, because just a brief reminder, and I will keep it brief because we don't discuss local municipal politics on this show. We stick to national politics and some state politics if it comes up. But here in Manchester, if you do happen to be listening in your car as you're driving during your afternoon commute, polls are still open, and I think they close at 7, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 7 or 8. I'm not sure. But there is a municipal election here in Manchester in my ward. You know, mayor, of course, on the ballot, and, you know, for the primary. And, of course, alderman at large. Eric Pilcher is asking, did you write in Christian? Yes, of course. Christian Lacoste for alderman at large. A write-in vote. If he gets at least 10, they'll report that on the news or something, 10 write-ins. But, yeah, so just a couple of things that were on the ballot. Very, very sparsely attended. I arrived at the polling place it must have been about 10:30 this morning. It was whenever I posted that picture. I think it was around 10:30, 11 at the latest. And no lines, no waiting, and barely anyone there. Obviously, the November election is the big one, and that will be the big turnout. But, wow, yeah, not a lot of people showing up. I mean, there were far more poll workers there, and there were more people out front holding signs, and that was also very sparse. You know, I live on the west side, and I vote at the Goslar Elementary. Is that what it's called? Or Goslar Park Elementary. And, yeah, no line, no waiting. Just walk in, check your, although the woman who checked me in, she was having a hard time finding my name. Because my last name is Connarton, and she kept looking for, like, Connor with a ton at the end. But it's not Connor. And it's not Conner, which is the most common misspelling of my last name. It's Connarton. But she was having great difficulty, but you know she did find it. So there you go. And because it's a local election, and we don't discuss local politics on the show, I'm not going to tell you who I voted for. But if you know me personally, or if you know me through listening to the show, whoever you think I voted for is you're probably right. And we'll leave it at that. Eric Pilcher joins us in the chat from the great state of Iowa, and Eric says, it's Nas. Nice choice. Nas is the most underrated lyricist of all time, in my opinion. I agree with you. Absolutely. I love Nas. And Dirk Don of Arrogant Media also in the chat room says, I like this Eminem song. Well, Eminem does have a verse on the track. So the track is actually, it's EPMD 2, the radio edit, of course, because we are on FM radio, by Nas, featuring Eminem and EPMD. So there you go. But yeah, I absolutely love Nas. Definitely one of my top 5. But that reminds me too, I want to say hi to somebody, and then we'll finish up saying hello to everybody in the chat. But we received, the station received an email and then forwarded it to me. A gentleman named Gary, I won't give his full name, you know, he probably doesn't mind, but he was listening to the show on the 20th and said, he sent this email to the station. Today, 9/20/21 at about 4 p.m., you played a really good rap song. I was wondering who it was from. It went, when we move, the whole world is following our path. And one verse was, from the projects to the palace. I like that. I once competed in a bodybuilding contest at the Palace Theater, and I really enjoy the Blue Suede Connection and the morning show. I'm a truck delivery driver for American Tire Distributors in Londonderry. Lastly, I crossed paths with EZG. Congratulations to him on his success. So congratulations to EZG from our listener, Gary, who works for American Tire Distributors. So hello, Gary. Thank you for listening. And I did respond to your email, but that track is called "When We Move" by Common, and Black Thought is also on the track. And I did email you back a direct link to the version that I played on the air, which was, of course, the clean radio edit of that. But glad you like it. You're the third person to say to me, usually I play these songs and no one, someone might comment in the Facebook live chat, but it's pretty rare to actually get an email from a listener saying, hey, what was that you played? But you're the third person that I've heard from. I might play that song today at the top of the hour. You're the third person I've heard from who really loves that track, When We Move by Common and Black Thought. Let's see. Tom Blanchard joins us in the chat and says, yep, it's a nice day. Oh, it's a beautiful day out. Christian Lacoste is in the chat, also known as DJ Reckless, and says, hey, hey, hey. Christian says, if you didn't write in Christian Lacoste for Alderman at Large, I'm not buying you free pizza. Well, I wrote in your name, Christian, so you feel free to buy me a free pizza. I did say I wasn't going to say who I voted for, but I'll reveal that much. Easy G is in the Facebook live chat. Hello, Eric. Let's see. We'll come back to that, but we have a call. Let's grab this. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Tony D.
Tony D from Philadelphia. How are you, my friend?
Oh, man, I got some stuff to talk about.
Really? Now, but by the way, before we go any further, have you fully recovered from your argument with John Hopwood?
I guess.
He did. I don't know if you were listening the other day, Tony, but he did apologize for getting so worked up. He just, I guess when you guys were arguing, what happens is, as he explained it, when you raised your voice, in his mind, it triggers memories of when he was in the Army and drill instructors would yell at him. So that's why he got so heated. He got heated up in here. I think the young people say that.
Got triggered.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But he did apologize for it. But, hey, it was great radio. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it always makes good radio.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you heard me say this the other day, but I posted a clip. You know how I like to, when something like that happens, I like to make a separate clip and post it on YouTube. I got dinged by YouTube. YouTube gave me a strike for medical misinformation. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. So I got my first YouTube strike.
That's why I never really messed with YouTube.
Yeah.
I always got strikes for like everything that I did, so it was just like kind of useless.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like some of the stuff that like we used to talk about on our show, which wasn't not safe for work, type stuff.
Yeah.
They would ding us all the time and pull our shows down, and I never really messed with YouTube. Facebook was where it was at.
Right. Well, of course, I mean, all these different platforms, they all have their own rules, and sometimes, as I discovered, they can be a bit arbitrary. I got the strike on YouTube, and then I thought, oh, it must have been a bot, and the bot picked up that we were talking about vaccines, because nobody in the room was anti-vaccine. Just the disagreement was more about mandates and who to blame for the problem that we're in, but nobody was expressing anything anti-vaccine. So I said that in the appeal to YouTube, because I was thinking, okay, a bot flags it initially, and then when you appeal it, hopefully an actual live person then listens to it and realizes where the mistake is. I appealed it, and they denied the appeal. So I can't upload to that particular account for 2 weeks, which isn't a big deal. I have a different account I've been uploading to, but
that sucks.
Yeah. Well, what can you do? But anyway, what's on your mind, Tony?
So I suffer from severe insomnia.
Yeah.
I've had this bout of insomnia for a little bit over a year now. Just kind of came out of nowhere. I used to be able to take like naps during the day, and I can't do that no more. And about 5 months ago, you couldn't catch me like taking a Tylenol, right? Like I wouldn't take. I was like, you want to talk about anti stuff? Like I'm like anti medicine, like medicine to the point like when I get into my point of what I'm about to tell you. So I never knew what a benzodiazepine was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just something that you take. So I was prescribed this medication at 2 milligrams a night to help with sleep. In the beginning, it was helping me sleep all throughout the night. And like I went through hypnosis, Matt. I went through acupuncture. I went through all these natural ways to try to get my sleep back.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctors and they prescribed me a benzodiazepine. Now I've been on this medication for 5 months every night, 2 milligrams a night. Well, come to find out, it kind of stopped working, and I've been getting like really lethargic during the day
Yeah.
now, like just losing energy and all these problems, and running back and forth to the hospital because it feels like there's something else that's wrong with me. Well, it's because I'm starting to come off of it now,
Okay.
and I'm having all these withdrawal symptoms. Do you know that these prescriptions, 40 million prescriptions for the medication that I'm on were prescribed last year, and no one knows about the tolerance and the withdrawal effects that the pharmaceutical companies don't put on the bottle?
It surprises me because they certainly put them in the advertising, I guess because they have to legally. You know how when you see those ads for a medication and and at the end it says may cause blah, 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 blah. But I would think, though, I mean, doesn't your doctor discuss that with you, or he or she
He didn't
should?
discuss it. He didn't discuss it with me until I started having these problems.
Yeah.
When I started to come off of it, then I realized that I was addicted to benzodiazepines, and I have to slowly. You can't just because I was just going to stop it.
Yeah.
I was just going to stop. And I was told you can't do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean I can't do that? I'm just going to stop the medication. I don't like the way it's making me feel.
Yeah.
No, because if you stop it, you can have a seizure. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he was like, it's an addictive medication. He goes, you've been on it and you build a tolerance to it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here scratching my head and I'm going, you put me on something that can probably screw me up. So I did a little digging and a little research, and it can cause dementia, it can cause Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, it can cause multiple sclerosis, it can cause fibromyalgia, it can cause all these problems.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I'm just shaking my head and I'm going through all these problems right now because I was medicated by a doctor with no if you would have told me this beforehand, I would have said no, I'm not taking it. I'll deal with the sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm.
I'll work through it. I get maybe 4 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And 40 million prescriptions were filled last year for this. And I'll tell you what, man, it's a nasty drug. It's a very nasty drug, and I now have a better understanding of knowing what a withdrawal is because I'm going through it right now.
Now let me ask you a question, and this is based on a comment that Jenny's making in the chat. So she says, medication addictions can be physical, can be psychological, or a combination of both. None of which means it will happen to others. So based on her comment, my question is, do you have any idea what the percentages are of people who have withdrawal coming off of this medication? Because what I'm wondering is are you a very rare case? You know what I mean? In other words,
the recommendation that I got was that I should actually go to a detox center to detox safely off of this and be monitored by 24/7 doctors and stuff like that, so I get off of it safely. That's what was recommended to me.
Right.
So if that's being recommended to me, and 2 milligrams is supposedly a light dose.
Yeah.
Because people take upwards to 20 milligrams of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And their recommendation was I should go to a detox facility to detox safely so I don't have a seizure.
Right. But
if they're telling me that, how many other people are they telling that? I don't know. To answer the question, I don't know the numbers. But
yeah.
if you were to Google benzodiazepines addiction or a tolerance addiction, you would see that the numbers are greater because they're only supposed to be used for like 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
I was prescribed it for 5 months.
Hmm.
So on an everyday use, I never abused it. I never took more than I was supposed to. I took what I was told, and now coming off of it, it's just like brutal hell, brutal hell.
Yeah.
Like like the side effects of headaches, nausea, vomiting, night sweats, rebound insomnia, anxiety, heightened anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
depression, loss of appetite, diarrhea, constipation. I mean, you name it, I got it. I mean, it's tough to come off of it. And like, I'm actually like considering. I'm like going back and forth and saying, maybe I should go to a detox place to kind of get off this. Sorry, there's a bunch of geese flying over me.
Oh.
I'm like debating on whether or not, I should go to a detox facility to do this safely, because I don't know what I'm doing, because I thought it was just like a prescription like anything else. You just take it every day and you'll feel fine. And in reality, it was just a Band-Aid to the problem. And now I'm starting to see the side effects of all the other problems that it causes.
But what does the doctor who prescribed it say?
He wants me to slowly taper off of it 0.5 milligram every 2 weeks. The detox facility that I talked to wants to do a quarter of that, not half.
Yeah.
They want to do a quarter detox, and they want me to be there for 20 days to get off of it safely.
Right.
Where they want me to do this kind of rapidly, kind of quickly, and I don't feel comfortable doing it because I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
All
right.
I was told was to be on this stuff.
Yeah.
And now I got to figure out whether or not I'm going to put myself in a detox facility, which I have no substance abuse issues ever in my life, to safely come off of this.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how many people in America are dealing with addiction or tolerance addiction, and I'm one of them now.
Right.
I can sit here and say that I definitely know what it's like to go through withdrawal, because it sucks.
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, though, I'd be curious to know the numbers of people who have this issue on this particular med in similar circumstances, only because I do want to be careful about not demonizing the medication itself. If this is something where the odds of what is happening to you happen if they're actually infinitesimally small and you're a rare case. Having said that, if this is not a rare thing and there are other people on the same medication who go through what you're going through, I do think your doctor should have had more of a conversation with you about that. I mean, I know when I've never been on any kind of medication like that, knock on wood. I do know when I went for a physical recently, and my doctor suggested I get the pneumonia vaccine, even though in theory I'm much too young for it. But because I have asthma, he felt that I was at high risk. He went out of his way to tell me, by the way, here are potential side effects, actually very similar to the Pfizer vaccine that I got to prevent COVID. And I think I wonder, but I also wonder too, if the numbers are so small statistically of what you're going through, that maybe that's why your doctor didn't feel he should have a conversation with you about it. But I'm
on Klonopin.
Yeah,
that's what I'm on, which is a very strong drug. It's a very strong drug.
But have you been on that all this time with, in other words, are you taking both medications simultaneously?
What do you mean by both medications?
Well, you've been on the Klonopin. Have you been, were you taking the Klonopin the entire time you were taking the benzo?
No. That is the benzo. Benzo is the classification of a Klonopin.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about two different meds. I'm kind of ignorant about that. Okay, I got you. Okay, so that's the same thing.
Classification of so Klonopin's the brand name. Benzodiazepine is what they are. So like Ativan, Xanax, Klonopin, all those fall underneath the category of benzodiazepine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you know about Xanax abuse, and I'm pretty sure you've heard about Xanax,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
people abuse Xanax just like they abuse Klonopin, except I was prescribed the Klonopin, and I gained a top. I didn't gain a addiction. I gained a tolerance where the body goes through cycles and motions of asking in physical ways for more of the medication.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get these sensations of feeling tingling or headaches, or you'll feel more agitated. It's the way the body's starting to tell you, hey, I want more of this medication.
Yeah.
And your dose that you're on, you're not going to get the same effect that you got before unless you take more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the abuse comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was like, put a big X on it, and I was like, I'm stopping this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming off of this. There's no way, shape, or form that I can stay on this. I got to come off of this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working right now on coming off of it, but I'm still debating whether or not I should go to a detox facility to come off of this safely.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that might be a good idea. Jenny is saying in the chat, at this point, following the doctor's orders is the best advice anyone can give you. Go inpatient if that's what is needed. And I would say, and obviously just for anyone listening, just to be very, very clear, to put the disclaimer out there, none of us are medical doctors. But I would say, just if it were me, if I felt that that was the safe thing to do, you know, you want to be safe. If you're not doing it safely, what's the point? So I think if that's the safest thing to do, then that's probably your best option.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm battling right now.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know, 40 million people were prescribed this medication last year.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a process, man.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
It's a hell of a process. So, all right, man. I just wanted to start the show off with some interesting facts.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you're going through that, Tony. Hang in there. God knows you've been through a lot.
Yeah, we'll get through it.
You will. You will. All right, Tony. Be safe.
All right, be good.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, that was Tony D from Philadelphia. And that opens up a line for you, 603-250-6007, 603-250-6007. Jenny says in the chat, that med is a black label medication. He would have gotten a lot of paperwork with warnings. Yeah, I just wonder... I mean, people tend not to read. I know I'm guilty of it, you know, getting paperwork from a doctor and then not necessarily reading it. And I think a lot of people probably are. But I'd be curious to know what the numbers are like as far as people who have an issue on something like that. And maybe if those numbers are very low, that might be why his doctor didn't really have a conversation with him about it. And it's also important to ask questions too of your doctor. You know, I remember a while ago, this was maybe at least 10 years ago, but seeing commercials on these public service announcements on television about how when you go to the doctor, make sure you ask questions, and they show someone sitting in a doctor's office and they've just been seen by the doctor, and the doctor says to the person in the commercial, do you have any questions for me? And the person in the commercial just kind of shrugs and says, no, I guess not. And you know, putting forth the idea that, look, you know, you're there, you've got to ask your doctor questions and be very, very clear about what you're on. I also think too, and I think Tony was kind of getting to this, there is a difference between, you know, being addicted, you know, sort of what you might consider just loosely drug addiction, being addicted to something and being dependent on something. And I don't know, hopefully I'm using somewhere in the ballpark of the right terminology here. But in other words, you know, being addicted to something is, you know, maybe you can't come off of it without terrible withdrawals, but you have no other reason to still be on it other than you're addicted. Whereas I would tend to think of being dependent on something. You know, a lot of pain patients are dependent in the sense that they need certain medications just to function, just to not be in terrible pain. like people who suffer from arthritis, just as an example. And I was thinking about that because I was reading something, because sometimes we talk about wrestling. I have a lot of listeners who are wrestling fans, as I am. And I happened to see something online yesterday. Hulk Hogan was talking about how he's now experiencing arthritis throughout his body at the age of 66, and how much pain he's in, and how he has to take something every day to deal with that just so he can get up and walk around, and because he's in such terrible discomfort. So we need to make a distinction, I think. And a lot of this I've learned from Jenny. We need to make a distinction responsibly between, being addicted to something and taking something that you need to take just to function because you have some sort of condition that is causing you chronic pain. My mother, for example, hi Mom, if you're listening, she was in a terrible car accident right here in Manchester, actually, on the Amoskeag Bridge. And I think the year was, I want to say 1979 or 1980. I was very, very young when it happened. I wasn't with her when it happened, but she was in a terrible accident. And she now, to this day, has chronic pain in her back from that accident. And she got into a terrible situation where she was on just a very low dose of something. I don't think she'll mind if I say this because I think we did speak about it openly on the show. She had been on for a very long time a very low dose of methadone, and just a low dose, so it wasn't getting her high or anything. But what it was doing is it was helping her to manage this excruciating chronic pain in her back so she could get up and walk around, and live life and not be bedridden. And but she got into a terrible situation because, this has been something that we've discussed a lot on the show over the years, is the government, our elected lawgivers and overlords, they perpetuate this narrative with the help of the media, this narrative that there's this terrible opioid crisis going on, whereas it's really a fentanyl crisis, to be more precise about it. But under the guise of this opioid crisis, they put out this narrative. Dr. Red Lawhern has been on the show a couple of times dispelling this. And if you look at the numbers, it's a fentanyl crisis. It's not an opioid crisis. But they perpetuate this narrative, and then they make laws that force doctors to then cut down, very often to almost nothing or nothing, the pain medications that their patients need. Not that they're quote unquote addicted to, not that because they're addicts or anything like that. No, medications that they need just to function. Because if you're a chronic pain sufferer, you might need something to help you even get up and move around. And you have these, you have these politicians who, let's be honest, at the end of the day, they don't care about you or me or our health and well-being. What they care about is, getting elected and then getting reelected and continuing to have power. So they do things that actually do more harm than good, but you wouldn't know it unless you know something about the issue, or you've talked to somebody, or maybe you have somebody in your family who's been affected by this. So they pass laws that force doctors to significantly cut down or limit the pain medications that they give to their patients. And this is all documented, and if you're a longtime listener, you've heard us talk about it on the show. And then you have people like my mother who damn near committed suicide. And this is not a unique story. Some people actually go through with it. But my mother, all of a sudden, this very low dose of methadone that she was on to manage her back pain, all of a sudden, cold turkey. Nope, can't give you that anymore. The doctor felt terrible about it, but the doctor's afraid of being arrested because the government changed the laws. And whenever the government gets in the way, boy, I'll tell you, just ask them in Texas, right? Whenever the government gets in the way of a patient and a doctor, they create larger problems than they could ever help to solve. But here's the really evil thing about it. The politicians who make these laws don't give an F who they hurt, because it just so happens that harming people in this particular way actually looks good, really good, in a campaign ad. See, You can get in the way of what a doctor prescribes to a pain patient and have pain patients committing suicide. Yes, that happens. And it doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because what's going to show up in the campaign ad when you're up for re-election? Oh, look what I did. I helped pass legislation to deal with the quote-unquote opioid crisis. I'm so concerned about the so-called opioid crisis, I helped pass legislation to deal with that. Re-elect me. And then people who are uninformed and don't know any better and actually fall for these campaign ads sit there and go, oh, wow, this candidate's really concerned about the opioid crisis. I'm going to vote for them. That's what's in the campaign ad. That's not the reality. The reality is this individual passed laws to make sure doctors can't give people the pain meds they need, and now pain patients are committing suicide. That's the truth. But that's not what's in the campaign ad. Of course, right? So the point being, I get, this has affected people I love. That's why I get worked up about this in particular. So, but the point being, we need to be very careful when we're having these conversations about medication. And I don't want to blame the medication. I feel terrible about what Tony's going through. And I've never, knock on wood, I've never had to take any kind of medication for pain. I mean, the most pain medication I've ever had to take is, if I get a headache, I take ibuprofen. And that's it, or I had a pinched nerve once, which was terrible. That was awful. So I can only imagine what it's like to be in chronic pain. I see it every day. I see it with Jenny, obviously, because she's in chronic pain, and I used to, my mother lives in another part of the country, but, I used to see it with my mother all the time because she's in chronic pain. So I get very impassioned about this. So I don't want to demonize the medication, whether it's being taken for pain or for mental health reasons or whatever. But I hope that Tony's doctor is, engaged enough with what Tony is going through to help him through this correctly and adequately. And like I said, if going somewhere to help get off of this medication, if that's the safest thing to do, that's what I think he should do. And I would reiterate that, Tony, if you're still listening. You want to do whatever is the safest option, especially now, you've got a new child, you have a family to think about, you want to be there for them and you want to be healthy. And so, I would suggest, my suggestion to you would be do whatever is the safest thing. This isn't something that you want to play around with and take chances with. Anyway, but 603-250-6007 is the number if you'd like to join us. By the way, Easy G is in the chat room and says prayers for Tony D. Absolutely. Scott Robinson joins us in the chat. Scott says, Matt, you are absolutely correct. It is a disgrace. And for people who want change in the city, they need to stop their complaining. That is referring to, of course, as I said, I went to vote today in the primary, the municipal primary here, and it was a ghost town. No line, no waiting. It was very convenient, though. Yeah. Oh, ECG said literally the exact same thing in the chat room. It was a ghost town. He was voting today in World 4. Let's see. Just want to make sure we don't miss anything in here. And then I do have something I want to move on to. Tom Blanchard is in the chat. Hello, Tom. Gonzo is in the chat room. Gonzo says, you suck. I think he was referring to Tony D. Gonzo is a bit of an antagonist at times. But he wrote that in there while Tony D was on the line. So, Jenny says getting addicted isn't always your fault. Right? Great point. Great point. Tom Blanchard says, have you tried a suppository? I think that's for something else, Tom, isn't it? Christian in the chat says, what did I miss now? Well, you can always go back and check the archive, Christian. Eric Pilcher says, Matt, have you watched the latest Dark Side of the Ring yet? I have not, Eric. I need to catch up on those. Stacy Lawton in the chat says, I have psoriatic arthritis because I have a very chronic case of psoriasis. And there are times I can barely get out of bed, and there are times that I can't even walk down the street. As a matter of fact, I was in Manchester last week, and it was very difficult for me to get down Elm Street. Yikes. Oh, that's terrible. Scott Robinson says, now that Tony D is back on the show, Matt, does that mean that Brian from Idaho is now a friend, or is he still mad? I have no idea. I mean, I'm not upset with Brian about anything. I don't know how he feels about me at this point. That's up to him. By the way, just to clarify one thing quickly, when I was supposed to go on that show, I was supposed to go on the show, No More Excuses. This was months ago. Not to rehash all of it, but just briefly, just to clarify one thing. I was supposed to go on the show, and then I posted a video responding to a call from Tony D and just responded to some of the things that Tony said, and then I was disinvited immediately from going on that show. It wasn't Tony. Tony was not the one who disinvited me. He still wanted to have me on, so just for the record. But everyone takes everything too seriously. I'm glad Tony and I are back on good terms. But how the resident of Idaho feels, no clue. Stacy Lawton says the medication I'm supposed to be taking is an immune system suppressant, and it literally shuts down the immune system in order to attack the psoriasis at its source. It's in a class called biologic medication. My God. I'll tell you what, anything, if somebody wanted to put me on something that one of the things it did was shut off the immune system, I'd have a lot of questions about that. The first of which would be, are you absolutely sure this is necessary? That is terrifying. Stacy said, I have chronic nerve-ending pain in the skin level, and boy, does it hurt sometimes. It feels like you just want to die. Oh. Yikes. And Eric says, this is regarding that Dark Side of the Ring show. Just watch Plane Ride from Hell. Disturbing stuff. Yeah, I almost don't want to watch it, Eric. There's a part of me that doesn't want to watch it because I'm afraid it will fundamentally alter in a negative way some of the wrestlers that I've been fans of over the years. Actually, it already has, just reading some of the press about that episode. Wow. Gonzo says, Tony would complain about itchy feet to get 10 minutes of attention. Oh, my goodness. Wow, Gonzo. Gonzo's very critical of our friend from Philadelphia. Stacy says, considering any topical cream or any standard treatment never worked. Boy, wow, that's a terrible spot to be in. Well, let me give the numbers again, and then I want to get to a very, very exciting topic for today. 603-250-6007 is the number, 603-250-6007. You can also text me at 617-917-4476. Tweet me at Matt Connarton or send an email to matt@mattconnerton.com. And, of course, you can interact and opine in the Facebook live chat, but the best thing to do is give us a call, 603-250-6007. I want to talk about an issue today that is very, very exciting. And you're probably, many of you will hear me just at the phrase that I'm about to utter. You will immediately find yourselves quivering with excitement and anticipation. And that phrase is this: federal debt ceiling. I know what some of you are thinking. They're thinking, Matt, you're thinking, Matt. They're thinking, you're thinking, Matt. You know what? I was thinking about pronouns. You're thinking, Matt, you're going to discuss such an exciting and scintillating topic on your show, the federal debt ceiling? Is that really wise to do this early on in the show? Because where do you go from here when you discuss such an exciting topic? I understand your concerns. I know it's very exciting. But here's the thing. Part of my motivation, well, I want to discuss the federal debt ceiling for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is extremely important and does not get discussed enough in a serious way in the media. Oh, Bob Burrow, my old friend Bobby B says federal debt ceiling or ceiling? WTF is that? He spelled ceiling two different ways. You're about to find out, Bob, and boy, is it exciting. My old friend Bobby B. He's in you're in Colorado, I think now, Bob. I know it's very exciting, but it's not something it's almost too exciting for mainstream media to really drill down on. But it's actually, in all seriousness, it is extraordinarily important. and it has come up again. And I always get nervous when this issue comes up and it's to be voted on. And you'll understand why in a moment. But it's actually, when I started this show, before I was even at WMNH, when I started this show as a podcast, 10 years ago, the summer of 2011, this is like the first big issue that I talked about, because at the time, there was an epic battle going on between the Obama administration and, at that time, House Speaker John Boehner. These intense negotiations over whether or not the debt ceiling would be raised. And as I learned more about the issue, I became terrified about what the outcome could be. Rocky Huber says, are your ratings a true debt ceiling or roof? Well, now you mentioned that, Rocky. I'm glad you bring that up, the through the roof reference, or through the roof, because that refers to a specific individual, which brings me to the other reason why I want to talk about the debt ceiling. Because a little bit before I came on the air today, I happened to see on the YouTube a certain individual from New York City, Crazy Joe, had posted a new video. He, after several days of being quiet, he posted a couple videos late last night, and he posted another short video today right before I went on the air. And one of the things that Crazy Joe was discussing in his video, you know, he was complaining about my program, as he likes to do. And he revealed that one of his greatest frustrations with me and with my show is that I don't devote enough time to discussing the federal debt ceiling, because even Crazy Joe understands that it's actually a very important issue, and the consequences of the debt ceiling not being dealt with correctly and appropriately could be devastating for the entire United States and, in fact, the global economy. And he feels very strongly that a part of what is lacking in my show is that I don't discuss the federal debt ceiling or very important topics like it, and that I need to focus on these things in a much more serious and thoughtful manner. And I really took that to heart, and I thought, you know, Crazy Joe, he's right. I think I'm going to spend some time on the federal debt ceiling today. Again, it is a very exciting topic, so I hope no one is experiencing heart palpitations just at the mere mention of it. But I do want to talk about it. Jenny says he is up to 3 since you have been on the air. Oh, wow. Very exciting. Eric Pilcher says, you want to talk about the debt ceiling because of Crazy Joe? This should be great, LOL. Well, you see, Eric, now, I sometimes I wonder if we've gotten the wrong impression of Crazy Joe. I think that he might be a far more deeper thinker than we think. Dirk Don, in all caps, says, no, Matt, don't let Crazy Joe control your show. Dirk, it's not a matter of control. He's just inspired me to talk about a very important subject. I mean, I think on this one, he's right. I think I should talk about the debt ceiling. Now, here's the thing. This first became an issue, like I said, at least to my knowledge, to my perception, back in the year 2011. The Obama administration really, they needed to raise the debt ceiling. And John Boehner, who was the Republican Speaker of the House at the time, famously said, or infamously, that he felt that in budget negotiations, the debt ceiling, I think I have this almost verbatim, may very well be a hostage worth taking. Now, prior to that, at least to my memory, the debt ceiling was never really up for negotiation. The debt ceiling was a perfunctory thing that was raised as needed. Now, at that time, I was on a television show called Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I was just getting ready to start doing this show as a weekly podcast. But on the television show that I was on, I was a co-host. The show was hosted by Gary Hopper, who's a conservative Republican. Most of the guests who came on the show were conservative Republicans. And I would get very, very frustrated because these folks would come on and they would talk about, we would talk about the federal debt ceiling. And what I realized very quickly is that the people I was interacting with on a consistent basis had such a stunning misunderstanding and misperception about what the federal debt ceiling actually is and what it actually does. And then I began to realize that most of the, at that time, the Republican Party had it was the rise of the Tea Party. Remember the Tea Partiers? Today they're called the House Freedom Caucus. But at the time they were the Tea Partiers. And their big thing, there was a definite split within the Republican Party. You had Republicans, more establishment type Republicans who just wanted to raise the debt ceiling as usual. But you also had these Tea Partiers who had really kind of crashed the party, literally and figuratively. And they wanted to vote against the debt ceiling. They had taken the position that we must not raise the debt ceiling because we cannot afford to spend any more money, and we're tired of all this fiscal irresponsibility. The government spends too much and whatnot, and we need to stop it. We need to stop all this deficit spending, so let's not raise the debt ceiling. Now, here's the problem. I began to realize that not only were people who I interacted with locally who didn't understand what the debt ceiling actually is, there were people in Congress. There were these Tea Partiers. See, this was what I always objected to about the Tea Partiers, why I found them to be so fundamentally dangerous. They wanted to vote against the debt ceiling, and they didn't even understand what they were voting on because they didn't understand. And a lot of people still to this day don't seem to understand what the debt ceiling is. And they believe that the debt ceiling and the federal budget are the same thing, and they are not. The federal budget is how much money you're going to spend. That's your budget. That's your federal budget. How much money is the federal government going to spend? Simple as that, right? The debt ceiling is a limit on how much money the government can actually borrow to spend. So, the federal government borrows money, prints money, whatever. We won't get into the mechanics of all of that. I'm not sure I even fully understand the mechanics of all of that, to be honest with you. It's more complicated than people think it is. And, when I try to understand it, it becomes more complicated than I can comprehend. But I do know this. Here's what happens. If you don't raise the debt ceiling, which until 2011 was a perfunctory thing, it was never much of a question. Previous presidents, both Republican and Democrats, always treated it as a perfunctory thing, a procedural thing that would come up in Congress. You just vote on it. Okay, we have to raise it. It's probably going to have to be raised every term. If you don't raise the federal debt ceiling, what happens is the federal treasury cannot meet its financial obligations. And that would mean that our government, for the first time, if we ever fail to raise the debt ceiling, and so far so good, we have come perilously close to not raising the debt ceiling. But we've always gotten it done. Our government, our elected lawgivers and overlords have always managed to get it done. Sometimes just in the nick of time. I'm not talking about, by the way, just to be clear, because people get this all mixed up. I'm not talking about a government shutdown. When the government shuts down because there's not a budget in place, and I'm not talking about that. The federal debt ceiling is a separate thing. It is the limit under which the government is allowed to borrow money. And we're in a perpetual state of borrowing, and I know that sucks, and if you're a deficit hawk, you hate it. I get it. But that is what the federal debt ceiling is. So if you don't raise it when necessary, the government cannot meet its financial obligations. So if that ever happens, this is why this is so important, and I don't know why it isn't talked about more. If that ever happens, our government, the United States government, goes into default For the first time in the history of the country, the United States government goes into default. And almost any economist will tell you, and there's many different economic theories. You know, you got the Keynesians on the left and the supply-siders on the right, and there's many economic theories. But most economists of any stripe are in agreement. If our federal government ever actually goes into default on the full faith and credit of the United States government, the economic consequences of that could be, and probably would be, catastrophic for the United States and for the global economy if the United States government ever goes into default. Therefore, it must not ever be allowed to happen. Therefore, you have to raise the debt ceiling. Now, people will say, and this is where people start to get it all mixed up, and this was where, 10 years ago, I started to realize, oh my God, we have people voting on something who don't even understand what they're voting on in the United States Congress. I mean, now I look back and I realize, oh my God, they vote all the time on things they don't fully understand. That's why I always complain on the show when I see these House and Senate hearings on technology, anything to do with tech or social media. Go on YouTube and look up, Mark Zuckerberg testifying before Congress and listen to some of the questions that they're asking the guy. And it's like, oh my God, these people have no idea what they're voting on half the time because they don't understand. Listen to these questions. Anyway, so I understand that better now. I guess actually knowing what the hell you're doing isn't part of the gig when you're an elected official. But I began to realize, because here's what I would hear from people. Again, not just people I would interact with locally, but when I would hear these congressmen, these senators on television, on these cable news shows talking about it, I began to realize they don't understand the difference between the debt limit and the budget itself. Because what someone will tell you is, well, we spend too much money. We need to spend less money. I'm tired of all this deficit spending. And you try to explain to them. I mean, I would try to use more tactful language, but I'll just use shorthand here. Hey, dummy, if you want to spend less, you reduce the federal budget. That's where you fix it. If you believe that the federal government is spending too much money, then you need to reduce the federal budget. That's what the federal budget is. How much we're going to spend, what we're going to spend it on, etc. That's where you fix it. You don't not raise the debt limit and just allow the country to go into default. That is insane. That is crazy town. You cannot allow that to happen. And yet, I would have these conversations and I would see these conversations on television. I remember one of the most egregious examples is this guy. I don't think he's in office anymore. I think he left because he got in trouble for sexual harassment. But this guy from Texas, Blake Farenthold, oh my God, look him up sometime on YouTube. That guy, he, let's just say, I assume his constituents were largely very close families. You'll understand when you see this guy and you hear him talk, right? But, I see these guys on television talking about how, well, we spend too much money and it's time to get our fiscal house in order. Then reduce the budget. And the best way, by the way, that I could explain it to anyone who doesn't get it, think of it this way. Suppose you buy a car, you finance a car. Now, you have a budget that you're spending every month. And you, obviously, your car payment is going to be a part of that budget, right? So you go to buy a car. And then let's say you have the car for a while and you decide one day, you know what? I think this car is too much money. I think I spent too much on this car. I think the payment is too high. I'm spending beyond what my budget I think should be on this car. And I can't really cut anywhere else. So I think I'm just going to stop making this car payment. Well, what's going to happen if you do that? You're going to default on your car loan. And then what's going to happen? You're going to wake up one morning and you're going to have an empty driveway. See? So default is a really bad idea. So if your problem is you're spending too much money, you need to look at your budget and figure out how to spend less. But just saying, well, here, I'm just not going to spend anything, or I'm just going to cut this off here and just not spend beyond, what are you going to do? You're going to maybe you keep the car, but you stop paying your electric bill? Well, then your electricity is going to get shut off. You can't default on things. You can, but it's going to wreck your life if you do. So once again, we're in a terrible situation, and maybe we'll talk about how this relates to what's happening right now in the second hour, or maybe we'll move on to something else. We'll see. But once again, we're in this terrible situation where there is a possibility, and I'm hopeful that they'll figure it out, figure out a way to compromise. But there is a possibility. Well, once again, we're flirting with the possibility of default, not raising the federal debt ceiling in time. Now, there are arguments over what happens and what is the sequence of events if we don't raise the debt limit in time. Some people say it wouldn't be that bad, or it would be bad, but it wouldn't be. Well, let me put it this way. I've heard economists say it might not be catastrophic, actually. It might just be really, really, really bad, but not catastrophic. So there are arguments about how severe the consequences would be. There's some disagreement there. We've never been there before. We've never defaulted. In the history of the country, we've never defaulted. But it makes me enormously resentful of our elected lawgivers and overlords that this has to ever come up. Mitch McConnell, to his credit, and it's rare that you'll hear me say something nice about Mitch McConnell, but other than, he is actively, he's been buying campaigns and media in Kentucky, his home state of Kentucky, trying to get people to go get vaccinated because he's very pro-vaccine. He's a polio survivor, so I guess he gets it. But Mitch McConnell at one point did try to pass legislation that would make the debt ceiling an automatic thing. So we wouldn't have to keep going through this, but looks like we're going to be going through it again. By the way, something you'll rarely hear me say something nice about the Trump administration. Mike Doyle, I hope you're listening. Take note. I will say this. This was never much of an issue during the Trump administration. Donald Trump himself made comments when asked about the debt ceiling. He made comments to the media that he felt that you have to raise the debt ceiling. It's not even a question. And he had people around him like Steve Mnuchin who said, yeah, of course you have to raise the debt ceiling. That should never be a question. That should never be on the table. You have to do that because you can't allow the country to default. So even Trump, who, we talk about his lack of sophistication on a lot of these issues, but even Trump understood why you have to raise the federal debt ceiling on schedule and you cannot allow the country to default. Again, he had people around him who understood it. His economic advisors, whenever that would come up and, on the Sunday morning talk shows, Mnuchin and the others, Kramer, they would say, well, yeah, you have to raise the debt ceiling. Default is not an option. The default would be a terrible idea. So, at least we had 4 years of an administration that, we had more than 4 years because obviously other administrations got it too. But, I always said, I remember saying at the time when the debt ceiling would come up, I would say, if we're going to have a Republican administration, at least we have a Republican in charge who understands the importance of raising the debt ceiling on schedule. So that was some comfort. All right. Anyway, so there you go. That's my very scintillating and exciting debt ceiling rant. So I would like to see it not continue to be an issue. All right. We are just a little bit past the top of the hour, so we're going to take a little break. Going to play a couple things, and then we will show some love to our sponsors, and then we'll come back and have some more scintillating discussion. But I think I'm going to, Tony D, he called and he mentioned he'd been struggling with insomnia. Well, I've played this on the show before. back in the day, I was in a little band called The Jinxed. Bobby B, if you're still listening, Bob used to come to our shows, actually, at McGillicuddy's in Loudon. But The Jinxed, and we had a song. This was kind of the closest thing we ever had to a hit, locally anyway. A little song called Insomnia from a band I was in called The Jinxed. So we'll listen to that, maybe one other thing, and then we'll come back, and we'll get an hour number 2 of Matt Connarton Unleashed. Don't go away.
Matt, this is on you for not having the patience and not having the dignity.
Welcome back, everybody. We are well into hour number 2, numero dos of Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we are live from the studios of WMNH 95.3 FM in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. Also on Comcast 97 if you're in Manchester, streaming at WMNHradio.org, and on the Facebook on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And, of course, you can go to my website, mattconnerton.com, for all of your live streaming options, social media links, contact info, show archives, etc., etc. By the way, we were just added to Amazon Music, the podcast version, so or at least I was alerted today that we were added to it. So you can get it on all the major podcasting platforms. But I hope that you're listening live, because that's the best way to listen, I think. Anyway, today is Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. I want to remind you we are proudly sponsored by the Hop Knot in the Brady Sullivan at 1000 Elm Street. Don't go there today because Monday and Tuesday is their weekend, but they will be open tomorrow, of course. Thursday nights, they have Trivia Night with the great Bill Cini. Friday nights, our friend Grant Lampton performs live at the Hop Knot from 7 to 9 p.m. as he continues his residency there. He has a show tonight, by the way. So if you're wondering why he's not here right now, usually Tuesdays, Grant comes in for the second hour, not as Grant Lampton, because that's his musical alter ego, but he comes in as Mike Sutterth for his weekly Tweakonomics segment, which we do in the second hour of the show on Tuesdays. But this week, he's coming in tomorrow on Wednesday instead. He asked me if it was okay to switch days just for this week because he's got a show tonight. He was offered a big show to go perform live, and so he's doing that. So I'm sure it will be going well. He's probably not on stage yet. It's only 5:23, but the time change as we go from summer to fall always kind of messes with me a little bit. I'm like, what time is it actually? Anyway. So he'll be here tomorrow. And of course, Wednesdays, we also have Dirk Don's album review segment. Dirk is in the chat, or at least he was, if the Matt Connarton remix version of Heaven's Door by Mailbox Dog didn't chase him away. So Dirk, if you're in there, feel free to let us know what you have ready for this week's album review, which we do air every Wednesday on the show. If you would like to join the discussion, 603-250-6007 is the number, 603-250-6007. You can also text me at 617-917-4476, tweet me at Matt Connarton, or send an email to matt@mattconnerton.com. And of course, you can always interact and opine in the Facebook live chat. But the best thing to do is give us a call at 603-250-6007. By the way, I get the impression in the Facebook chat that people did not enjoy the Matt Connarton Unleashed edition, version rather, of Heaven's Door by Mailbox Dog. So perhaps I should play the original to close out the show. Dirk in the chat says, if I keep getting pressed on what I'm reviewing, I'll just do a review of AC and no one will have a good time except me. Yeah, that would have to be heavily edited. AC is, I can't say it on the air, obviously, what AC stands for, but some of you might know. Bobby B, Bob Burl in the chat, he and I used to work together at Strawberries, and he mentioned in the chat room how I used to play there. I would, so Strawberries, for those who don't know, a music store. You know, we sold CDs and DVDs, and eventually it got bought by Transworld, which at the time owned Record Town, which eventually became FYE. So eventually all the Strawberries locations were transformed into FYE. But it was a music store. CDs, DVDs, some games, T-shirts, posters, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I was one of the managers there, and for a while I was booking bands to do in-store events at the FYE that we were in, which was a lot of fun. And I would, because, you know, I never met a conflict of interest that I didn't dive headlong into. I started booking bands that I actually played in, which nobody seemed to mind. But yeah, so I played at Strawberries a few times because I had a band called in that era, I was in a band called The Jinxed, and then I was in a band called My Life Crisis with some of the same members, and we did play there at Strawberries. That was a lot of fun. Those were good days. Bob says, "UGG became corporate AF." Yes, it did. It became over the years, that job. You know, it's not. I mean, you see a movie like Empire Records, and you think it's going to be super fun, and it was fun, but over the years, it became increasingly more corporate and increasingly less fun. But what I was thinking about, and the reason how this relates to Dirk's comment is, we sold tickets at Strawberries as well. We had the ticket board, and people would come in for tickets. And occasionally we would have tickets for the band that Dirk is referring to. But in our computer at Strawberries, it would just say AC. It wouldn't say, because you can't say those words. And now Alexa is talking. The Alexa just says, I don't have an answer for that. Never mind, Alexa. Alexa's not going to stop talking. Alexa, stop. There we go. I think it shut off. I don't know if the mic picks that up or not. But yeah, so we would sell shows to when AC was playing in Massachusetts, or I don't think they ever played New Hampshire, but they'd play at the Palladium in Worcester or whatever. But it would just say AC in the computer. Because I assume there would probably be employees who might get offended seeing that. But we all knew what AC meant. Eric Pilcher in the chat says, hearing Heaven's Door, I now know what a cat getting neutered without being put under sounds like. Oh, you don't appreciate the vocal stylings of Crazy Joe. You know? Well, here, I'll tell you what, though. Take heart in this. Those of you who are disapproving of Crazy Joe, think of it this way. That song, even the remix version that I made, that I slaved over for hours and hours. No, I'm kidding. It took me like 5 minutes. But I put very little effort into that, obviously. But even the remix version of that, take heart in knowing this. That literally is as famous as Crazy Joe is ever going to be. That's it. That's his ceiling. We talked in the first hour about the debt ceiling. That's the Crazy Joe ceiling. That is the most fame and notoriety he's ever going to experience. So there you go. Drink it in. All right, let me give the number one more time, 603-250-6007, 603-250-6007. I did want to discuss this. I made reference to it on yesterday's show, and then we just ran out of time. We are in a conflict, a bit of a conflict, a diplomatic row, if you will. Is it row or row? With France. And it's just very strange because you don't expect to turn on the news and see that we have trouble with France. Now, it's not any kind of military situation. Obviously, we're not going to go to war with France. I mean, hell, they're one of our NATO allies. This is not anything like that. And I suppose you could consider it a diplomatic crisis, but it's really economic in nature. But what strikes me about this is it almost, at first glance, it seems like something you would expect from the Trump era, right? Because during the Trump administration, Trump took great pleasure, it would seem, in kind of sticking his fingers in the eyes of our allies at times. And you would expect, Angela Merkel was never particularly enamored of him, I'm sure, and others. He seemed to get along well with Macron, or at least tried to appear to. But But he did like to rankle NATO a little bit. You know, he'd sort of, while he appeared to be cozying up to Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un, and meanwhile he's trying to almost distance the United States from our NATO allies at times. So you'd almost expect a story like this to pop up during the Trump administration, but here we are in the Biden administration, and we see a problem with France. And apparently we are blamed for costing France a tremendous amount of money. And I have to tell you, I kind of don't blame them in a way. I'm not French, but I'm of Irish and German descent. But regardless, if somebody cost me billions of dollars, I must tell you, I'd be a little bit upset as well. Eric Pilcher in the chat room has a joke. By the way, I'll just remind everyone, because we have a lot of French here in Manchester, especially on the west side where I live. Whatever ball breaking is done on the show is always done with love and affection. No offense intended. But Eric has a joke. Did you hear about the ad for French military rifles that were sold? Hardly used condition, dropped once, never fired. But that reminds me of the joke that I heard once that I'm not going to tell. Anyway. I'll tell it. I'm going to tell a variation of it. How many French military personnel did it take to defend Paris? No one knows because it's never been tried. But these are jokes. These are jokes. Just jokes. All said with love. Okay. This is what the AP is reporting. France's Macron to talk to Biden amid crisis over submarines. And by the way, so it's not as bad as, when you hear crisis over submarines, it's like, whoa, are there French submarines in America's waters? Are we about to invade France? What's going on? It's nothing like that. French President Emmanuel Macron will speak in the coming days with President Joe Biden in their first contact since a major diplomatic crisis erupted between France and the United States over a submarine deal with Australia, an official said Sunday. The phone call is at the request of Biden. Government spokesman Gabriel Attal, adding that there was shock and anger at first in France over news of the deal, but now it's time to try to move forward, he said. What the French now call a grave crisis erupted over the sudden surprise end to a 2016 contract worth at least $66 billion between France and Australia to build 12 conventional diesel-electric submarines. Instead, Australia signed on with the United States and Britain for 8 nuclear-powered submarines. France insists it was not informed of the deal in advance. $66 billion. I can understand why they're upset. France recalled its ambassadors from the United States and Australia in a sign of seriousness of the crisis. Now, you see what I mean? There's more to this. We'll come back to the rest of the story. But you see what I mean? That sounds like you hear about ambassadors being recalled and everything. Sounds like we're going to war with France. Now, obviously, that's not what's happening here, but usually don't hear about ambassadors being called home unless there's something's about to go down. I'm going to butcher this name, but I will make the attempt. Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, nailed it, met Sunday with the 2 ambassadors to discuss, quote, the strategic consequences of the current crisis, unquote. The ministry said without elaborating, quote, what's at play in this affair, this crisis, are strategic issues before being commercial issues. The question is, the forces present, the balance in the Indo-Pacific, where part of our future is at play and our relations with China, unquote. The deal by the United States reflects the American pivot toward the Indo-Pacific region, seen as increasingly strategic as China bolsters its influence there. Probably should have thought about that before giving up Bagram Air Force Air Base, by the way. Just throwing that in there. Just a little. Yet France feels the deal steps on its feet in a region where it has long had a strong presence that it, too, is working to bolster in addition to a 5-year contract with Australia. quote, France is a country of the Indo-Pacific, unquote, Atoll said, or Atoll, or Atal, noting the French territory of New Caledonia, the French citizens living in the region, and the French military forces based there. The Indo-Pacific is also an issue for Europe, he said. Macron will be seeking explanations from Biden about what led to, quote, a major rupture in confidence, unquote, the spokesman added. Quote, there was a moment of shock of anger. Now we must advance, unquote. On Friday, Le Drian railed against what France views as a betrayal marked by, quote, duplicity, disdain, and lies, unquote, in the submarine affair. Wow. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Sunday that France, quote, would have had every reason to know that we have deep and grave concerns about the capability of France's attack class subs, unquote, which he said can't meet Australia's strategic interests. So, I mean, ultimately, it's a breakdown in communication, but like I said, it appears as though they've managed to cost, this whole deal has cost France about $66 billion. And 66 of anything is a lot, whether it's $1 million or $1 billion. That's pretty wild stuff. Mike Lindell, by the way, has, we won't spend much time on this because it's not worth really bothering with, except to say, for those of you who were bummed, disappointed, let down in any way by the lack of, remember Reinstatement Day? It may not have been on your calendar, but Reinstatement Day was the day that Donald Trump was supposed to be reinstalled as our president. That day had passed, and Mike Lindell, you know, the MyPillow guy and political activist apparently, has now stated, and he said this talking to Steve Bannon. I guess Steve Bannon has a show that is online, or maybe it's on Newsmax. I don't know. But he told Steve Bannon that Reinstatement Day has now been moved to Thanksgiving Day. Now, I have a concern about this. Taking him at his word that he knows something and he knows when Reinstatement Day is now going to be, I am uncomfortable with the idea of Reinstatement Day now happening on the same day of Thanksgiving. I think it's going to be a little bit tricky because we already have a holiday that day. That's Thanksgiving. So you can't, I mean, mixing holidays, I think, is just because, you know, obviously once Trump is reinstalled on Reinstatement Day, I assume one of his first acts in office will be to sign an executive order making Reinstatement Day an official holiday. But how do you do that when we already have Thanksgiving on that same day? So I think that's going to be very confusing. In fact, I would not want Reinstatement Day to happen even on the Friday, Black Friday. Thanksgiving weekend is a big deal. People are traveling to see their families. They're doing their holiday shopping. You can't have Reinstatement Day on Thanksgiving. How dare he? I'm not saying it's his decision. I'm sure that somebody from QAnon told him, oh, that's when the new day is. But also, too, so not only do I not think it's appropriate to do it that day, but, I don't want to, I don't want anyone to think I'm picking on the poor guy, but, after all, he did invent MyPillow, and he's a former crack addict. Which he fought his addiction. He came back from that. Good for him. And then went on to build a business empire. But here's the thing. So he keeps moving the day. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if anyone else has thought about this, but it kind of reminds me of when, these preachers, they say that God told them when the end of the world is going to be, the specific day. Don't forget to buy your food buckets because the end of the world is coming on such and such a day. And then the day comes and goes and the world hasn't ended. And then they just say, oh, well, yeah, turns out I might have misheard what God was telling me when he was talking to me. It's actually going to be on this other day. So get ready for that day. And then that day comes and goes. And I kind of feel like Mike Lindell's doing something similar here. I hate to be the fly in the ointment, but it's kind of like Lucy with the football there. It just, no reinstatement today. Well, actually, it's going to be this other day now. But if you are following the Mike Lindell reinstatement stuff. That is the new day, so get ready for that. I want to get this in, but let me give the number again, 603-250-6007, 603-250-6007. We've been talking a lot on the show lately. Of course, we talk a lot about vaccines, so much so it got me a strike from YouTube. Oh, Eric Pilcher in the chat room, and Eric is a conservative from Iowa. He says, I voted for Trump. Trump lost. Get over it. Exactly. Yes. Very good, Eric. Agreed. Well, I agree with you, except I didn't vote for Trump, but I agree Trump lost. Get over it. Yes. I think that's good advice. We should put you in touch with Mike Lindell. Maybe you can talk him down. I don't know. But we talk a lot on the show about the vaccines, and we've been talking recently about how there's this pattern where you have these conservative talk show hosts who are rabid anti-vaxxers, and they spend their programming encouraging people not to get vaccinated. And then these talk show hosts who are encouraging people not to get vaccinated end up getting COVID, and then they end up in the hospital, and then they end up on a ventilator, and then they end up dead. I think we're up to 6 of them now. No joke. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not exaggerating for effect. I think we're up to 6 different conservative talk show hosts, small, it's no big names, small time, regional or local conservative talk shows around the country who just, they go on the air every day. They preach their COVID denier anti-vax message. And then karma comes along and says, hey, I'm going to land a steel toe boot right in your groin. And then they end up dead from COVID. So there's a story up on Mediaite that now this is not a talk show host who is saying this. This is a guy who is a writer for the conservative site Breitbart. And this is one of the most remarkable, crazy right-wing theories I've heard yet. But it has to do not with the virus, the pandemic itself, or with the vaccines themselves. It has to do with the narrative around vaccines. And this is not from The Onion. This is real. This is from Mediaite. Breitbart writer insanely blames libs for, quote, manipulating Trump fans into dying of COVID vaccine refusal. So in other words, this writer claims that liberals are trying to manipulate Trumpers into not getting vaccinated and dying. Fascinating. We have a call. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, it's Easy G.
Easy G, Eric Agnon. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I don't listen to him anymore because I leave my radio off at night, but that guy, Clyde Lewis,
yes,
he's a big name in the business, and he's a big anti-vaxxer, anti-COVID, and vaccine and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so if he was to pass, the bad luck they seem to be having with these anti-maskers people on the radio, he's definitely one of the biggest names on the, at least he says he is. I don't know how famous he is nationwide, but
it's not bad luck. It's bad judgment. These people.
Well, true. You're right. Good point.
I mean, luck has nothing to do with it.
As far as I know, he's a big name in the his show is on the radio, and it goes all over the United States. I don't know how big he is, but I mean, I know who he is.
My dad is familiar with him. My dad listens to him. He likes some of what Clyde Lewis has to say and doesn't like some of it. And I assume
right. I think I sleep better with not knowing anything about him anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And my father is vaccinated, and he's not a COVID denier. Just to be very, very clear.
Right.
So I'm sure
I think I sleep better not listening to his BS all the time.
Probably, yeah. I'm sure it's not healthy to listen to.
Of course not. It was on like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's when you should be sleeping and not listening to his crap.
From 10 a.m. to 1
I don't
p.m.?
listen to him anymore.
Or you mean from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m.?
Right. But anyways, on a lighter note, what do you think? I haven't asked you in a couple of days. What do you think of Big E getting one of the belts, the big belts in wrestling?
Oh, I think it's cool. I mean, I don't follow WWE much. I've really kind of switched over to AEW. But I think Big E being given one of the world titles is very cool.
Yeah, I think eventually it looks like they're gearing up for a match with the head of the table.
Roman Reigns, yes. Yeah,
right?
Big E is someone they can really build around, I think.
Oh,
He's got a
He's
ton
popular.
of... He's got the crowd loves him. The fans love him. He's got a ton of star power. He's a big guy, which Vince likes. I mean, he's not particularly tall for a wrestler. I think he's 5'10",
right?
But he's built, and he's got a ton of charisma. And I think he's relatively young too. He's only 35. Which,
right.
A lot of
young guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of older, over 40 wrestlers these days. So he's someone I think they can really build around long term. They don't have the patience or the discipline to actually do that, but he's someone that they could do that with.
They're slopping up in their promos because they're already looking past the Roman Reigns and the I forget. I bought some jewelry there. The Finn Balor is Devil. The
Demon.
Because they're already promoting him fighting that guy from Monday Night Raw with the big spike there. Anyways, one of those guys, and they're already promoting him with the fighting of Brock Lesnar at that crazy Saudi Arabia crown jewel.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're gonna want people to watch the pay-per-view. They shouldn't promote other events and have Roman Reigns holding the title.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty sloppy, don't you think?
I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to WWE these days.
Right, but I'm telling you, this is what's going on. And people say there's promos out there with Roman Reigns holding on to the belt, and it's already past the Finn Balor thing on Sunday. So to me, that's sloppy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you really think they're going to let Finn Balor beat him? I mean, I'd like to see it, but
no.
Finn Balor.
But eventually, he's going to take the belt off, and he can't hold it forever.
Finn Balor should be an AEW. They'd know what to do with him.
Yeah, true. He's a Universal Champion years ago. So
he was the first Universal Champion.
Well, I don't think AEW can't take every guy from WWE.
No, but
they've already taken a lot of guys now.
They have, and Kevin Owens, his contract is coming up soon, and they might grab him. And Bray Wyatt should be showing up there soon, and I'd love to see Finn Balor there.
It's a possibility. Yeah, you're right.
Anything's possible. It's wrestling. All things are possible.
Yeah, true. I guess I'm reading a small article about that Dirt guy was talking about behind the scenes of wrestling, and I guess it was some pretty bad promos about Ric Flair.
Yeah, Eric Pilcher was asking me if I'd watched that Dark Side of the Ring episode.
I didn't watch it, but I saw some experts of it, and they.
Yeah.
And I saw a little video of him calling in years ago to the Howard Stern show when a certain wrestler was on, and that wrestler committed suicide.
Wait, what? Who? What?
Well, this wrestler was gay, I guess, and people weren't dealing with that years ago about the gays and stuff. And
Chris Kanyon.
And Ric Flair had called up and said, he was just not being that nice.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that had anything to do with him taking his life, but they were saying Ric Flair wasn't very nice to him.
Yeah, apparently Chris Kanyon was gay. Now, but I'll tell you how far things have come. Now,
well, I don't know if that's what caused him to kill himself, but one of the reasons, I guess.
Right. He had a lot of issues. He was in the closet for very long, and then he came out.
Right.
And then
that's where he had to be years ago.
He killed himself not long after. But things have come a long way. Now there's openly gay wrestlers. Nobody cares. Kenny Omega, I believe, is openly bisexual. Nobody cares. We've gotten to a point where it's not an issue for people, and I think that's a great sign of progress.
Right.
Yep. Scott Robinson in the chat, by the way, EZG is asking, is it possible the Hulkster will come back? Wants to see the Hulkster.
No, since he can't really walk around anymore, he's all done. Nobody in their right mind is going to put Hogan in the ring.
Right. Eric Pilcher.
Unless he signs a waiver, but that's not going to happen. Steve Grogan years ago, he a big Patriots fan, but years ago he had to sign a waiver that if he breaks his neck again and he can't walk, the Patriots weren't held responsible. That's how bad they used to be.
Eric Pilcher in the chat says Chris Kanyon is this week's episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Oh, I'll be damned. I'll definitely have to check that out. I've got to catch up on
those.
Who's that? Who's who?
Who's Chris?
Chris Kanyon. We were just talking about him, the wrestler who committed suicide.
Oh, they're going to talk about it, you mean?
Yeah. He's the
Well,
subject.
that's probably why I saw that promo with Ric Flair calling up the he was on the Howard Stern show.
Probably. That makes sense. That would make sense, yes.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot of horror stories about every wrestler, and
Of course.
if they can find one, they're gonna look for one. It's not too hard to find, because Howard Stern, all his radio, same with your show, all the radio shows are archived, so it's not too hard to find them.
Yeah, that's true. I'm actually my goal is by the end of this week to have every episode of Matt Connarton Unleashed ever. I mean, all the ones that I've done here at WMNH, of course, are on the WMNHradio.org, but I have all the backlog of the podcast from before I was here at the station. I'm trying to get all of it online on the podcast.
Yeah, I know you're running out of time with this guy. I forget the guy's name, but while I was waiting for the bus, he yells out, "Hey, Easy G." I said, "Well, who are you?" He says, "I'm friends with a friend of mine. You might I might his name before, Christopher Duffley's father, Steve Duffley, listens to the show sometimes. So if he's listening, hello, Steve Duffley. Like I always say, you never know who's listening.
Hello, Steve Duffley.
Right. I know that guy since '88 when I used to go to a great group called Stepping Stones, and then later on that year, it was '89, no, it was '88 or '89. One of those years, he got married, and I was at his fabulous wedding, and now 5 kids later. He's a busy man.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, St. Joe's Church, over 300 people there.
Shout outs to Steve Duffley.
Way back in the day.
Way back.
I'm going to let you go. I know you got to wrap up your show, so we'll talk to you guys later.
All right, Eric.
Bye.
Thanks for the call. Bye-bye. All right, Easy G, Eric Gagnon. Hey, just really quickly, I want to get this in before we go. So this is the story from Mediaite. Breitbart writer insanely blames libs for manipulating Trump fans into dying of vaccine refusal. This is what it says here. Breitbart news writer John Nolte argued Monday that Howard Stern, speaking of Howard, and the left are using reverse psychology to trick Republicans into dying of COVID. Stern, Nolte argues, has mocked unvaccinated radio hosts who died of COVID because he and the rest of the liberal media are, quote, deliberately looking to manipulate Trump supporters into not getting vaccinated so that they die. The absurd and convoluted assertion involves a hierarchy of owns that ultimately culminate in large swaths of Trump voters dying. It goes on from there. All right, let's get this. I did share it out on the Unleashed Facebook page, but let's grab this last call. Oh, nobody there. Someone was trying to sneak in a call. He eventually arrives at an encouragement for taking the vaccine, but seems to suggest that the primary motivation to get inoculated, of course, own the libs. The implicit point, buried in the usual MAGA writer bluster about libs and owns and CNN LOL, is that the vaccine saves lives and that people should get vaccinated to stay alive, as even Donald Trump himself has seen, even implying a message of get vaccinated can, on the right, be a recipe for being booed, at least, if not driven right off a stage or out of a Texas restaurant. So instead, Nolte argues that, in fact, they aren't trying to boss us around to get us to take the vaccine, but to not take the vaccine. Wow. So this is from the, we're going to run out of time quickly. This is from the article that he wrote. If I wanted to use reverse psychology to convince people not to get a life-saving vaccination, I would do exactly what Stern and the left are doing. I would bully and taunt and mock and ridicule you for not getting vaccinated, knowing the human response would be, hey, blank you, I'm never getting vaccinated. Oh, boy. All right. Anyway, there's more to that, but that's a new level of crazy. Okay. I mean, yeah, I taunt and I make fun of the anti-vaxxers and whatnot, but it's not out of reverse psychology. It's I do want them to get vaccinated, but I can be pretty insulting about it, I'll admit, but it's because I'm frustrated and angry because I want to end this pandemic. And we have all this, like I said to John Hopwood that day, and it kind of got him a little bit triggered. We have all the tools. We have every tool in the toolkit we need to end this pandemic, but we won't do it. because a large swath of the population has decided, nope, we're pro-pandemic. We're going to keep this thing rolling right along. Anyway, all right, we are out of time. Thank you all so much. I will be back tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow I will be joined in the second hour by our friend Mike Sutterth for his weekly Tweakonomics segment, and also Dirk Don's album review tomorrow. And we'll see what other trouble we can get into. If you missed any part of today's show, it will be up in just a little bit at WMNHradio.org and, of course, at mattconnarton.com. And we've added Amazon Music to the podcasting platforms that carry the show afterwards. So that's a great thing. And like I mentioned to Eric, I'm also trying to get all the back episodes of the show up. And when the YouTube suspension ends, I'll get them up on YouTube as well. I have another channel I'm putting them on just to be safe. Anyway, all right. So we are out of time. We got to go. I'm going to leave you with another Nas track. This is 40 Side. And because I agree with Eric Pilcher, that Nas, one of the greatest MCs ever. And I will talk at y'all a little bit later.